The gunshot echoed through the quiet village of Ashwood just as Sarah Mitchell was closing her clinic for the night. She froze, her hand still on the door handle, listening to the silence that followed. Then came the screams. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs as she peered through the window. In the dim light of the street lamps, she could see villagers running, their faces twisted in terror. Smoke rose from somewhere near the market square, thick and black against the darkening sky. "Lock the doors," someone shouted in the distance. But Sarah couldn't move, because there, collapsed against the wall of her small medical clinic, was a man. His clothes were torn and soaked with blood. His breathing came in ragged gasps, and even from where she stood, she could see the life draining from him with each passing second. Every instinct screamed at her to stay inside, to protect herself. The gunshots meant danger. The screams meant chaos. But Sarah had taken an oath as a nurse, back in Boston before she came to this small African village as a volunteer. She had promised to help those in need. Her hands trembled as she unlocked the door. The man's eyes flickered open as she approached. They were dark, intense, filled with a mixture of pain and something else she couldn't quite identify. Warning? Desperation? Fear? "Please," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Help me." Sarah knelt beside him, her professional training taking over. The wound was in his side, bleeding heavily. She pressed her hands against it, feeling the warm blood seep between her fingers. "I need to get you inside," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. The man shook his head weakly. "Too dangerous. They're coming." "Who's coming?" Before he could answer, another volley of gunshots rang out, closer this time. Sarah's blood ran cold. She looked down. Sarah's heart stopped as the door crashed inward, splinters of wood flying across the clinic floor. But her hands never left Kofi's wound. In that split second, she made a choice that defied all logic, all self-preservation. She threw her body over his, shielding him with her own. "Stop," she screamed. "I'm a medical professional. This man is my patient." 3 men stormed into the clinic, their boots heavy on the tile floor. They wore mismatched uniforms, dark and intimidating, with rifles slung across their chests. The leader, a tall man with a scar running down his left cheek, stepped forward. His eyes were cold, calculating. "Miss Mitchell," he said, his English precise but accented. "Step away from the man. This doesn't concern you." "Everything that happens in my clinic concerns me," Sarah shot back, surprised by the steadiness in her own voice. "This man is bleeding out. If you want him alive, you'll let me finish treating him." The scarred man's lips curved into something that might have been a smile, but there was no warmth in it. "Who said we want him alive?" Sarah's blood turned to ice, but she held her ground. Behind her, she could feel Kofi's labored breathing, could sense him gathering what little strength he had left. "Then shoot him," Sarah said quietly. "But you'll have to shoot through me first." The silence that followed was suffocating. The 3 armed men exchanged glances. The leader's hand moved to his rifle, and Sarah braced herself for the end. But then, from somewhere deep in the village, an explosion rocked the night. The walls of the clinic shook, and dust rained down from the ceiling. The scarred man cursed in a language Sarah didn't understand. He barked orders at his companions, and they rushed to the window, peering out into the chaos beyond. "Sir," one of them said urgently, "it's the government forces. They've found us." The leader's face darkened with fury. He turned back to Sarah and Kofi, his jaw clenched. "This isn't over," he snarled. "We will be back for him. And when we come, not even your American passport will save you." Then they were gone, disappearing into the night as quickly as they had come. Sarah's legs nearly gave out beneath her. She grabbed the edge of the examination table for support, her whole body shaking with the aftermath of adrenaline. "You shouldn't have done that," Kofi said weakly. "You should have let them take me. And let them execute you in my clinic?" Sarah turned back to him, her hands still trembling as she resumed her work. "Not a chance. You don't understand what you've just involved yourself in. Then explain it to me." Kofi was quiet for a long moment as Sarah extracted the bullet with careful precision. He barely flinched, though she knew the pain must have been excruciating. When she government troops arrived about 10 minutes ago. They're searching for rebel fighters, but it's chaos. Buildings are on fire, people are hiding in their homes. Amara's eyes shifted to Kofi, lying on the examination table. Is he one of them? One of the rebels? Sarah hesitated, unsure how to answer. But Kofi spoke up, his voice steady despite his weakness. I'm a soldier, yes. But not a rebel. I'm trying to stop the real criminals. Amara studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. My father says the government troops are no better than the rebels. They take what they want, hurt who they want. We trust no one in uniform anymore. She turned back to Sarah. But we trust you. If you're helping this man, then we'll help him too. It's too dangerous, Sarah protested. If they find out you're involved. We're already involved, Amara interrupted. This village has been caught between these forces for too long. If there's a chance to stop it, we'll take that chance. She looked at Kofi again. Can you walk? Kofi nodded, though Sarah could see the effort it cost him just to stay upright. Where would we go? There's a safe house, Amara said. In the old quarter, near the river. Nobody knows about it except a few of us. You can hide there until you're strong enough to travel. Another explosion, closer this time, made the decision for them. Sarah grabbed her medical. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She felt Kofi tense beside her, his body coiling like a spring despite his injury. Amara and the other women stood frozen, their eyes wide with terror. Let them go, Kofi said, his voice surprisingly strong. This is between you and me, Commander Badu. So the scarred man had a name. Commander Badu. Sarah filed it away, though she wasn't sure why it mattered. They were probably all about to die anyway. Badu laughed, a harsh sound that echoed off the narrow alley walls. You think you're in a position to negotiate, Mensah? You can barely stand. I can stand well enough to fight you. With what? You're unarmed, bleeding, and surrounded. Badu stepped closer, his rifle now pointed directly at Kofi's chest. The general sends his regards. He says it's time to come home. Dead or alive. He doesn't care anymore. You've caused too much trouble. Sarah's mind raced. She still had the thumb drive tucked into her pocket, burning like a hot coal against her thigh. If Badu searched them, found it, everything Kofi had fought for would be lost. Wait, she heard herself say. If you kill him here, you'll alert the government troops. They're already searching the village. Do you really want to explain to them why you're executing an unarmed man? Badu's eyes shifted to her, cold and calculating. The government troops are busy fighting fires. They won't hear a thing. But the villagers will. Amara spoke up, her voice trembling but determined. There are dozens of witnesses. If you kill them here, in the open, everyone will know. Word will spread. Let it spread, Badu said dismissively. These people know better than to talk. Do they? Sarah pressed, sensing a slim opening. Because I'm not from here. I'm an American citizen working with an international aid organization. If I disappear, people will ask questions. Lots of questions. The kind that bring international attention. For the first time, Badu hesitated. Sarah could see the calculation in his eyes, weighing the risks. General Okafor might have domestic power, but international scrutiny was different. It could bring sanctions, investigations, things that even corrupt officials feared. You're bluffing, Badu said, but there was uncertainty in his voice now. Try me, Sarah replied, meeting his gaze steadily. My organization knows where I am. If I don't check in tomorrow morning, they'll send people looking. Real people, with real resources and diplomatic immunity. It was partly true. The aid organization did track its volunteers, but whether they'd actually send anyone into an active conflict zone was questionable. Still, Badu didn't need to know that. The commander's jaw clenched. He lowered his rifle slightly but didn't put it away. You're making a mistake, Miss Mitchell. You could have walked away from this. Gone back to your comfortable American life. But now you're involved. And that means you're a target too. I was involved the moment I took an oath to save lives, Sarah said quietly. Including his. Badu stared at her for a long moment, something like respect flickering in his cold eyes. "I'm sorry," Kofi said simply. "So am I." Sarah turned to look at him. "What about you? Why risk everything to fight corruption? You could have just kept your head down, followed orders." "I tried that," Kofi admitted. "For a long time, I convinced myself that I was just a soldier. Following orders wasn't my job to question them. But then I was ordered to participate in a raid on a village suspected of harboring rebels." His voice grew heavy with grief. "There were no rebels, just farmers and their families. We killed 12 people that night, including children. And General Okafor called it a successful mission." Sarah's heart ached at the pain in his voice. "That's when you decided to act?" "That's when I realized I had to. Because if good men do nothing, evil men win. It's that simple." Before Sarah could respond, Amara burst through the door, breathing hard. "We have a problem. My cousin agreed to help, but government soldiers just set up a checkpoint on the main road out of the village. They're searching every vehicle, checking everyone's papers." "Can we go around?" Sarah asked. "Not without traveling through the bush, and that would take days." "Days we don't have." Amara's face was grim. "There's only one road to the capital, and they're blocking it." Kofi tried to stand, grimacing with pain. "Then we fight our way through." "With what?" Sarah demanded. "You're injured and unarmed." "I'm a nurse, not a soldier. This isn't an action movie, Kofi. We can't just shoot our way past a military checkpoint." "Then what do you suggest?" Sarah's mind raced, trying to think of options. Then something Amara had said earlier sparked an idea. A crazy, dangerous idea, but possibly their only chance. "We don't hide," she said slowly. "We do the opposite. We go through the checkpoint openly in plain sight, but not as fugitives." She turned to Amara. "Do you have any clean clothes? Men's clothes?" Amara looked confused but nodded. "Yes, my husband's things." "Why?" "Because," Sarah said, her plan taking shape, "we're going to make Kofi look like a patient being transferred to a hospital in the capital. I'm a nurse transporting a critically ill man who needs emergency surgery. We'll have medical documents, proper papers. They won't suspect a thing." "That's insane," Kofi said. "What if they recognize me? They're looking for a fugitive soldier on the run, not a sick civilian being cared for by an American nurse." Sarah felt her confidence growing. "It's bold enough that it might actually work. Or get us all killed," Amara muttered. "Better than sitting here waiting for Commander Badu to come back." They spent the next hour preparing. Amara brought clean clothes and helped make Kofi. Sarah's mind went blank for a split second, pure panic threatening to overwhelm her. But then her training kicked in, that calm, professional demeanor she'd cultivated through years of emergency medicine. "Fugitive?" she said, injecting just the right amount of confusion and concern into her voice. "Officer, I don't know what you're talking about. This man is dying. Look at him." She climbed back into the truck bed, motioning for the soldier to follow. Up close, Kofi looked genuinely terrible, his skin clammy, his breathing shallow. The makeup Amara had applied made him almost unrecognizable. But would it be enough? "Check his vitals," Sarah said, pulling out her stethoscope with shaking hands. She pressed it to Kofi's chest, listening to his heartbeat. It was racing, whether from fear or genuine distress, she couldn't tell. Elevated heart rate, low blood pressure. Classic signs of internal bleeding. If we don't get him to an operating room soon, he's going to die right here in this truck. The soldier looked uncertain. He spoke into his radio again. "The woman says it's a medical emergency. The man looks bad, sir. Really bad." A crackling voice responded, too low for Sarah to make out the words. The soldier's face hardened. "I need to see both your identification papers. And his." Sarah handed over her passport and work visa without hesitation. "His papers are here," she said, rifling through her medical bag and producing the forged documents. "His name is Joseph Asani. He's a farmer from the village. No criminal record, no political affiliations. Just a sick man who needs help." The soldier studied the papers carefully, comparing the photo. Another stroke of luck. Amara had found an old ID of her husband's that bore a passing resemblance to Kofi, to the man lying in the truck bed. "He doesn't look like his photo," the soldier said suspiciously. "Of course he doesn't. He's been violently ill for the past 12 hours. Would you look like your photo after that?" Sarah's voice grew sharper, more urgent. "Officer, I understand you're doing your job, but I'm doing mine too. And my job is to save lives. Every minute we stand here arguing is a minute closer to this man's death. Do you want that on your conscience?" The soldier wavered. Sarah could see the conflict in his young face. Duty versus humanity, following orders versus basic decency. "Please," she added softly. "I know there's trouble in the region. I know you're looking for dangerous people. But this isn't him. This is just a farmer who needs surgery. Let us through, and I promise you, we'll go straight to the hospital. No stops, no detours." The radio crackled again. The soldier listened, then nodded reluctantly. "You can go," he said. "But there will be another checkpoint 20 miles up." "Give me the thumb drive," Kofi said suddenly.
"What? No."
"You said." "Sarah, listen to me. If they catch us, they'll search you. They'll find it, but they won't think to check inside my wound." Sarah stared at him in horror. "You want me to hide it inside your body?" "Kofi, that's insane. The infection risk alone is better than letting 3 years of work fall into Okafor's hands. Do it.
Now."
The vehicles were getting closer. Sarah could see lights through the trees now, bouncing and weaving as they navigated the rough terrain. Her hand shaking, Sarah pulled out the thumb drive. It was sealed in waterproof plastic, small enough to fit. Technically, it could work, but the medical side of her brain screamed at the risk. "This could kill you," she said. "So will they?" "Choose, Sarah." She chose. With steady hands born of years of practice, she reopened a small section of the wound, placed the drive inside, and stitched it back up. The entire procedure took less than 2 minutes. Kofi's jaw was clenched, so tight she thought his teeth might crack, but he didn't cry out. "Done," she whispered, just as the first vehicle burst through the undergrowth. It wasn't a military truck. It was a battered Jeep, and the man driving it wore civilian clothes. But Sarah's relief was short-lived when she saw the gun mounted on the back. The Jeep skidded to a stop, and 3 men jumped out. They weren't soldiers, but they had that same hard, dangerous look. Mercenaries, maybe, or militia. Well, one of them said, grinning. "What do we have here? A truck full of travelers, all alone in the woods. That's not very safe." Sarah's blood ran cold. These men weren't looking for Kofi, specifically. They were just predators who'd found easy prey. "We're having vehicle trouble," Sarah said, trying to keep her voice steady. "We'll be on our way soon." "Vehicle trouble," the man repeated, still grinning. "That's unfortunate. Lucky for you, we're here to help. For a price, of course." "We don't have much money," Kwame said from beneath the truck, where he was still working on the stuck rock. "Oh, I think you have plenty," the man said, his eyes roaming over Sarah in a way that made her skin crawl. "That's a nice medical bag. Expensive equipment. And you?" He gestured to Sarah. "You're American, yes?" "Americans always have money." "I'm a volunteer aid worker," Sarah protested. "I barely have enough to." "Empty the bag," the man interrupted, his smile fading. "And your pockets. All of you. Now." His companions raised their weapons, making it clear this wasn't a request. Sarah's mind raced. They were going to rob them, probably worse. He went down hard, blood blooming across his chest. A second wound, this one far worse than the first. "No!" Sarah screamed. The sedated man collapsed, finally overcome by the drug. The other 2 attackers, seeing their leader down and facing fiercer resistance than they'd expected, ran for their Jeep. Kwame threw the tire iron after them, but they were already gone, disappearing back into the jungle. Sarah dropped to her knees beside Kofi. Blood. So much blood. It was pumping from a wound dangerously close to his heart. "Stay with me," she commanded, her hands already working, applying pressure, trying to stop the bleeding. "Kofi, stay with me." His eyes fluttered open. "The drive," he gasped. "Promise me, you'll get it to Chen." You're going to get it to her yourself, Sarah said fiercely. You're not dying. I won't let you. But even as she said it, she could feel his life slipping away beneath her hands. The bullet had done massive damage. Without immediate surgery, without proper equipment, he had minutes at most. Sarah, Kofi whispered. Thank you. For everything. Don't you dare say goodbye, Sarah sobbed, still fighting, still trying to save him even as she felt him fading. Don't you dare. Kwame had finally freed the truck. He ran to them, saw the blood, and his face went pale. We need to go.
Now.
Those men might come back with reinforcements. I can't move him. He'll die. He'll die anyway if we stay here, Kwame said gently. But maybe if we drive fast enough, if we can get him to a real hospital. It was a slim hope. Probably no hope at all. But it was something. Together, they lifted Kofi back into the truck bed. Sarah climbed in beside him, maintaining pressure on the wound, whispering prayers she'd learned as a child. The truck rumbled through the pre-dawn darkness, and Sarah sat in the back, still holding Kofi's hand. His body was already growing cold, but she couldn't let go. If she let go, it would make his death real, and she wasn't ready for that yet. Miss Sarah, Kwame called back softly. We're approaching the outskirts of the capital. We need to decide what to do. What to do? The question hung in the air like a weight. Sarah had a dead man in the back of a truck, evidence hidden inside his body, and killers who would be hunting her the moment they discovered Kofi was dead. Find a clinic, Sarah said, her voice hollow. A private one if possible. Somewhere quiet. What are you going to do? Sarah looked down at Kofi's peaceful face, remembering his words. You're brave. Braver than most soldiers I've known. She didn't feel brave. She felt terrified and broken. But she'd made a promise. I'm going to finish this, she said quietly. Kwame found a small clinic in a poor neighborhood on the edge of the capital. The sun was just beginning to rise, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Sarah had always loved sunrises. Now she wondered if she'd ever see one the same way again. The clinic was run by an elderly doctor named Dr. Mensah, no relation to Kofi, just a coincidence of common surnames. He was suspicious at first, seeing a white woman and a driver carrying a dead body into his facility. But when Sarah explained she was a medical professional and showed her credentials, he reluctantly agreed to let her use his examination room. I don't want any trouble, Dr. Mensah warned. I'm too old for trouble. There won't be any, Sarah lied. I just need to perform a proper examination and prepare the body for burial. She waited until the doctor left, then locked the door behind him. Her hands were steadier now than they'd been all night. Maybe she was in shock. Maybe she'd simply moved beyond fear into a place where nothing mattered except the mission. The surgical extraction was one of the hardest things Sarah had ever done. Not technically difficult, she'd performed far more complicated procedures. But cutting into Kofi's body, a man she'd fought to save just hours ago, felt like a violation. Like she was desecrating something sacred. But she did it. She found the thumb drive, still sealed in its waterproof plastic, and cleaned it carefully. Then she stitched Kofi back up, making him as presentable as she could. He deserved dignity, even in death. I'm sorry, she whispered, closing his eyes again. I'm so sorry I couldn't save you. But I won't let you down. I promise. She tucked the thumb drive into her bra, the safest place she could think of. Then she washed her hands, took a deep breath, and walked out to face Dr. Mensah. I need your help with something else, she said. I need to get to the UN compound. Wait here, he said, disappearing into the guardhouse to make a call. Sarah stood in the morning sun, trying not to look nervous. Across the street, she noticed a black sedan with tinted windows. It had been there when she arrived, engine idling, watching. Her stomach clenched with fear. Had they followed her? Were Okafor's men already here, waiting to see what she would do? The guard returned. Ambassador, Chin will see you. But first, you need to go through security screening. Sarah nodded, expecting this. She was led through a metal detector, and her bag was searched thoroughly. But they didn't search her body. The thumb drive remained safely hidden. A young woman in professional attire met her on the other side of security. "Miss Mitchell? I'm Lisa Chen, the ambassador's assistant. Please follow me." They walked through the compound, past busy offices and conference rooms. Sarah caught glimpses of world maps, documents in multiple languages, people from dozens of countries all working together. It should have felt safe, secure. Instead, she felt exposed, like a target painted on her back. Lisa led her to a third-floor office with a view of the city. Behind a large desk sat a woman in her 50s, her black hair streaked with gray, her eyes sharp and intelligent behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Miss Mitchell," Ambassador Chen said, standing to shake her hand. "My assistant says you mentioned Kofi Mensah. How do you know that name?" Sarah took a deep breath. This was it. The moment everything either came together or fell apart. "I know it because I met him," she said quietly. 3 days ago, he collapsed outside my clinic, wounded and running for his life. I treated him. I hid him. And I watched him die protecting the evidence you've been waiting for." Ambassador Chen's face remained professionally neutral, but her eyes sharpened with interest. "That's quite a story. Do you have any proof?" Sarah reached into her bra and pulled out the thumb drive. She placed it on the desk between them. This drive contains 3 years of evidence against General Okafor and his network. Names, dates, bank accounts, photographs of massacres. Everything Kofi died to protect. "He told me to bring it to you." Chen stared at the drive for a long moment, then looked up at Sarah. "If what you're saying is true, then you're in grave danger. Okafor will stop at nothing to prevent this evidence from being made public." "I know. I've already had several encounters with his men. They know I helped Kofi. They'll be looking for me. Then you'll need protection. I can arrange." A loud alarm suddenly blared through the building. Red lights began flashing in the hallways. Chun grabbed the thumb drive and thrust it into a drawer, locking it quickly. She'd spent her whole adult life healing people, trying to make the world a little better one patient at a time. But maybe sometimes healing wasn't enough. Maybe sometimes you had to fight. Hours passed. Sarah listened to the radio, hearing confused reports of a standoff at the UN compound. The armed group hadn't breached the building yet, but they hadn't left either. They were waiting, applying pressure, demanding Sarah's surrender. Then, around midday, she heard something that made her blood run cold. "Breaking news," the radio announcer said. "President Koroma has just given a televised address, demanding that the United Nations turn over the American woman, Sarah Mitchell, who stands accused of crimes against the state. He has given them until sunset to comply. If they refuse, he says he will consider it an act of aggression and will take all necessary measures to retrieve her." Sarah's hands shook. This had escalated beyond anything she'd imagined. An international incident. Diplomatic crisis. And she was at the center of it. There was a knock on the safe room door. Sarah jumped, her heart hammering. "Miss Mitchell? It's Ambassador Chen. I need to speak with you." Sarah unlocked the door cautiously. Chen slipped inside, her face grave. "I'm not going to lie to you," the ambassador said without preamble. "The situation is deteriorating rapidly. President Koroma is threatening military action if we don't turn you over. He's claiming you stole classified documents and aided in the murder of government soldiers." "That's insane. I'm a nurse. I helped a wounded man." "I know. And I've copied the evidence from the thumb drive. It's explosive, Sarah. Proof of war crimes, corruption at the highest levels, connections to international arms dealers and drug cartels. This isn't just about one corrupt general. This is a criminal enterprise masquerading as a government." Within 2 hours, Ambassador Chen had assembled an emergency press conference. The main conference room of the UN compound was packed with journalists from around the world, cameras and microphones crowding every available space. Sarah stood backstage, her stomach churning with nerves, watching the controlled chaos through a gap in the curtain. "You don't have to do this," Chen said quietly beside her. "Even now, we can still get you out quietly." "Yes, I do," Sarah replied, though her hands were shaking. "For Kofi. For everyone who's suffered under Okafor's regime. Then remember what we discussed. Stick to the facts. Don't embellish, don't speculate. Just tell the truth. The evidence will speak for itself. Chen walked out onto the stage, and the room fell silent. Sarah watched as the ambassador approached the podium, her face composed but serious. Thank you all for coming on such short notice, Chen began. I'm here to present evidence of systematic war crimes, corruption, and human rights abuses perpetrated by senior military officials in this country. This evidence was compiled over 3 years by a brave soldier named Kofi Mensah, who was murdered 3 days ago while trying to deliver it to my office. A murmur rippled through the crowd of journalists. Camera flashes lit up the room like lightning. The evidence includes documentation of 19 separate massacres of civilian populations, financial records showing the theft of over $200 million in government funds, and proof of connections to international criminal networks. I will be releasing this evidence to the public immediately following this press conference. Chen paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. But first, I want to introduce you to someone who risked her life to ensure this evidence reached us. Miss Sarah Mitchell, an American nurse who has been working as a volunteer in one of the villages affected by this violence. Sarah took a deep breath and walked onto the stage. The lights were blinding, the cameras intimidating. For a moment, she froze, overwhelmed by the attention. Then she thought of Kofi, lying in the back of that truck, using his last breaths to make her promise she'd finish this. She thought of his smile when he'd called her brave. She stepped up to the podium. My name is Sarah Mitchell, she began, her voice stronger than she felt. 3 days ago, a wounded man collapsed outside my medical clinic. I'm a nurse. My job is to save lives. So I did what any medical professional would do. I brought him inside and treated his injuries. She told them everything. About the gunshots in the village, about hiding Kofi from the soldiers, about the evidence he carried. She told them about Commander Badu and General Okafor, about the chase through the jungle, about the firefight that took Kofi's life. He died protecting this information, Sarah. Come quietly, or watch innocent people die because of your stubbornness. Sarah looked at Chen, at the journalists still filming, at Amara's terrified face. There was no good choice here. If she surrendered, Okafor would probably kill her anyway, make the evidence disappear. But if she didn't, innocent people would suffer. Let the villagers go, Sarah said slowly. All of them. Release them safely, and I'll come with you. Sarah, no. Chen protested. It's the only way, Sarah said quietly. I won't let more people die for me. Okafor smiled, victorious. A wise decision. The villagers will be released immediately. You have my word. Your word is worthless, Sarah shot back. I want proof. I want to see them walk free, on camera, before I go anywhere with you. Okafor's smile tightened, but he nodded.
Very well.
Commander Badu, arrange their release. The next 30 minutes were tense and chaotic. Badu made calls, arrangements were made. And slowly, villagers began arriving at the UN compound. Amara's family, Kwame the truck driver, others Sarah recognized from the village. They were beaten, frightened but alive. Amara grabbed Sarah's hands as she was released. You don't have to do this, she whispered urgently. We knew the risks. We don't regret helping you. I know, Sarah said, squeezing her hands. But I regret what happened to you. Take care of yourself. Take care of your family. What about Kofi's sister? Amara whispered even more quietly. Did you find her? Sarah's blood ran cold. She'd been so focused on everything else, she'd forgotten. Kofi's sister, the university student. If Okafor knew about her, where is she? Sarah asked urgently. Safe for now. But if you disappear, if they silence you, she'll be next. Sarah's mind raced. She turned to Chen, pulling her aside. Kofi Mensah's sister. Do you know where she is? Chen nodded. We located her this morning. She's a student at the National University. We've had people watching her, but we can't offer her protection if you're in custody. Okafor will use her to get to you, to discredit the evidence. Then we need to get her out.
Now.
Before I leave with Okafor. It's too risky. The university is across the city. We'd never make it in time. We have to try, Sarah insisted. Then a thought struck her. Unless we don't have to go get her. She turned back to the assembled journalists, many of whom were still filming. I have one more statement to make before I go with General Okafor. The interrogation lasted for hours, though Sarah lost track of time in the windowless cell. They didn't torture her, not physically. Instead, they used psychology, standing her against a wall for hours, blasting loud music, depriving her of sleep, asking the same questions over and over until her mind felt like it was breaking apart. Just sign the confession, one interrogator kept saying. Say you fabricated the evidence. Say you were working with foreign intelligence. Sign it and this all ends. No, Sarah whispered, her voice hoarse. I won't lie. You're going to break eventually. Everyone does. Why prolong the suffering? Because Kofi didn't break, Sarah thought. Because good people don't give up. But she was so tired. Her body ached, her mind was foggy, and part of her wondered if maybe it would be easier to just sign whatever they wanted, to make it stop. Then the door opened, and Commander Badu entered. The interrogator straightened, clearly afraid of him. Leave us, Badu ordered. When they were alone, Badu studied Sarah for a long moment. You look terrible. Thanks, Sarah muttered. I'm not here to hurt you, Badu said, which somehow made Sarah more afraid than if he'd said the opposite. I'm here to offer you a deal. I'm not interested in deals. You haven't heard it yet. Badu pulled up a chair and sat down, his movements casual, almost friendly. General Okafor wants you to confess, to discredit the evidence. But I think that's a waste of time. You're not going to break, not easily. You're too stubborn. Is that supposed to be a compliment? It's an observation. Badu leaned forward. But here's what you need to understand. Okafor is planning something big. Something that will make all of this, the evidence, the press conference, the international attention, completely irrelevant. Sarah's stomach clenched. What do you mean? In 2 days, there's going to be an attack. A terrorist bombing at the National University. Dozens of students will die, including Kofi Mensah's sister. And the blame will fall on rebel groups, on foreign agitators trying to destabilize the country. Okafor will use it to justify a complete military crackdown. Martial law. Mass arrests. Anyone who speaks against the government will be labeled a terrorist. You're lying, Sarah whispered, though she could see in Badu's eyes that he wasn't. I wish I was. But Okafor's already planted the explosives. The attack is scheduled for tomorrow afternoon, when the campus is most crowded. Badu paused. Unless someone stops it. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm tired, Badu said simply. Tired of following orders that make me sick. Tired of watching innocent people die. I joined the military to protect my country, not to murder children. He met her eye. Before Sarah could respond, he was gone. The interrogation resumed with renewed intensity. The men seemed angry now, as if they'd been reprimanded for not breaking her quickly enough. They shouted questions, made threats, described in graphic detail what would happen to her if she didn't cooperate. But Sarah held on. She thought about Grace, racing to warn the university. She thought about the students who would live because of a phone call made in secret. She thought about Kofi and his belief that good people still existed. And she refused to break. Hours passed. Or maybe days. Sarah couldn't tell anymore. She drifted in and out of consciousness, her body and mind pushed beyond their limits. She dreamed of her brother Marcus, of him telling her to stay strong. She dreamed of Kofi, smiling and calling her brave. Then suddenly, the interrogation stopped. The men left without explanation, and Sarah was alone again in the cell. She collapsed on the floor, too exhausted to even wonder why they'd gone. She must have slept, because when she opened her eyes again, someone was shaking her gently. Sarah jerked awake, defensive, but then saw who it was. Dr. Mensah, the elderly doctor who'd let her use his clinic to extract the thumb drive from Kofi's body. What? How? Sarah's voice was barely a croak. No time for explanations, Dr. Mensah said urgently. We need to go.
Now.
He helped her to her feet. Sarah's legs barely supported her weight, but adrenaline was kicking in. How did you get in here? The same way we're getting out, through people who are tired of living under Okafor's thumb. You're not the only one who wants to see him fall. Dr. Mensah led her out of the cell and through a series of corridors. The bombing plan that was leaked to the press, it worked. The university was evacuated. No explosives were found yet, but the story is everywhere. Okafor is scrambling to control the narrative. So it's over? Not even close. Okafor is furious. He's ordered a city-wide manhunt. But the chaos has also created opportunities. Like this one. They reached a service entrance where a van was waiting. Inside were 3 other people, all wearing civilian clothes but carrying themselves like soldiers. Rebels? Defectors? Sarah couldn't tell. Get in, one of them urged. Sarah climbed into the van with Dr. Mensah's help. As they pulled away from the military base, she finally let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, she was going to survive this. Where are we going? She asked. Somewhere safe, Dr. Mensah said. Somewhere Okafor can't reach you. And then, Miss Mitchell, we're going to finish what you started. We're going to bring him down. Sarah woke to the sound of urgent voices. For a moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then it all came flooding back, the escape, the resistance, the warehouse. She sat up quickly, her body protesting the sudden movement. Every muscle ached, but the rest had helped. Her mind felt clearer than it had in days. Colonel Kruma burst into the room without knocking. We have a problem. A big one. Sarah's heart sank. What happened? Okafor has a Joa, Kofi's sister. His men grabbed her an hour ago from her dormitory, despite the media attention. He's threatening to execute her on live television unless you turn yourself in within 24 hours. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. She'd tried so hard to protect Ajoa, had named her publicly to shield her with international scrutiny. But Okafor was beyond caring about international opinion now. He was desperate, cornered, and lashing out. I have to go, Sarah said, standing despite her exhaustion. I have to turn myself in. That's exactly what he wants, Kruma said firmly. If you surrender, he'll kill both of you, execute you together, and claim you were conspirators. Use it to justify even more brutal crackdowns. Then what do you suggest? Let an innocent girl die.
No.
We rescue her. Kruma pulled out a tablet, showing Sarah a map of the city. Our intelligence says Okafor is holding her at his private compound here in the Eastern District. It's heavily guarded, but not impossible to breach. You're talking about a military raid, Sarah said, understanding the implications. That's open warfare. People will die. People are already dying. Every day that Okafor remains in power, more innocent people suffer. Kruma's eyes were hard, but not without compassion. This isn't about revenge, Sarah. It's about stopping a monster before he destroys everything. Kofi understood that. That's why he fought for 3 years, why he was willing to die. Sarah looked at the map, at the compound where a terrified girl was being held hostage. She thought about Kofi's last words, about his sister going to university, wanting to be a teacher, about futures stolen by corrupt men. What do you need from me? Sarah asked quietly. Your voice. While we're preparing the rescue operation, I need you to record that statement. Tell the world what Okafor is doing. Build pressure on him from every side. The more attention we bring to Ajoa's situation, the harder it will be for him to execute her quietly. Sarah nodded. Let's do it. An hour later, she was standing in front of a camera again, but this time in a warehouse instead of a UN conference room. Grace Osei, the journalist who'd helped expose the bombing plot, was there to conduct the interview via video. Ya's voice was heavy with grief. 3 of us did that. I'm the only one still alive. Okafor found the others, made examples of them. I'm sorry. Don't be. They died fighting for something that mattered. That's more than most soldiers can say. Ya checked his rifle one more time. Tonight, we finish what Kofi started. We save his sister. And we make Okafor pay. As darkness fell, the team loaded into 2 vehicles, unmarked vans that looked like civilian vehicles. Sarah rode in the second van, her medical bag packed with supplies, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and determination. The drive across the city was tense. They passed several military checkpoints, but the vehicle's fake documentation held up. Okafor's forces were looking for Sarah, but they weren't expecting her to be traveling with armed commandos toward the heart of his power. Okafor's compound was in an exclusive neighborhood, surrounded by high walls and armed guards. From a distance, it looked impregnable. But as they got closer, Sarah could see what Kruma had meant about weaknesses. The compound was designed to look imposing, not to withstand a determined military assault. The vehicles stopped 3 blocks away. The team quickly exited, moving with practiced precision. Sarah stayed in the van as ordered, watching through the tinted windows as they approached the compound's rear wall. Then the shooting started. Even from 3 blocks away, Sarah could hear it, the sharp crack of rifle fire, the deeper boom of explosives. The rear wall of the compound erupted in smoke and debris as the team breached it. Alarms began wailing, and lights flooded the compound. Sarah's hands clenched on her medical bag. Someone was going to get hurt, maybe killed. And they were doing it to save Kofi's sister, to finish the mission that had started when a wounded man collapsed outside her clinic. Minutes felt like hours. The shooting continued, sporadic now. Then Sarah's radio crackled. She'd been given one to monitor the operation. "We're in," Ya's voice came through. Searching for the target. More waiting.
More gunfire.
Sarah thought she might go insane from the tension. "Found her," Yo reported. "She's alive. Repeat, target is alive and secure." Moving to extraction point, Sarah allowed herself to breathe. They'd done it. Against all odds, they'd actually done it. But then, contact. Multiple hostiles converging on our position. We're pinned down in the east wing. Need backup now. The driver of Sarah's van swore and grabbed his own weapon. "Stay here," he ordered Sarah, then ran toward the compound. Sarah sat in the van, alone, listening to the chaos over the radio. The team was in trouble. "You've done more than anyone could have asked." Chen smiled gently. "You saved a country, Sarah. That's not nothing." Sarah looked at Ajoa, who was being examined by UN medical staff. The girl looked so much like her brother. The same determined eyes, the same quiet strength. "What about her?" Sarah asked. "We'll make sure she's protected, educated, given opportunities. She wants to be a teacher, right? We'll help make that happen." Sarah nodded slowly. It wasn't enough. Nothing could bring Kofi back, but it was something. Later that night, as Sarah sat in a safe UN apartment waiting for arrangements to be made for her flight home, she finally let herself cry. Not just for Kofi, but for everyone who'd been lost in this fight. For the innocence she'd lost, for the simple life she'd left behind. But she also cried tears of relief and gratitude. Because against impossible odds, they'd won. Truth had triumphed over corruption. Good had defeated evil. 3 weeks later, Sarah stood at the arrivals gate of Boston Logan International Airport, breathing in the familiar cold air of New England autumn. Everything looked the same. The crowds of travelers, the coffee shops, the advertisements in English. But Sarah felt like a completely different person from the one who'd left for Africa 6 months ago. Her parents rushed toward her, her mother crying, her father's face tight with emotion. They'd been terrified when news broke about her involvement in exposing General Okafor. They'd watched the press conferences, the dramatic rescue, everything unfold on international news. "Sarah, thank God," her mother sobbed, holding her so tight Sarah could barely breathe. "We thought we'd lost you." "I'm okay, Mom. I'm safe now." But was she really? Even here, thousands of miles from that small African nation, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, of danger lurking around every corner. The doctors said it was PTSD, that it would take time to feel safe again. Her father drove them home, asking careful questions about what happened. Sarah answered what she could, but found herself editing the worst parts, not wanting to burden them with the full truth. How could she explain what it felt like to cut evidence out of a dead man's body? Or to be interrogated for hours? Or to watch Commander Badu kill General Okafor? Some things couldn't be shared, only carried. The house was exactly as she remembered, her childhood bedroom still decorated with posters from high school, photos of her and Marcus from before he joined the army. Sarah stood in the doorway of his room, which her parents had kept exactly as he'd left it, and finally allowed herself to grieve properly. She'd been so focused on surviving, on fighting, on finishing Kofi's mission that she hadn't fully processed everything she'd lost. Not just Kofi, but the innocence she'd had before all this. The belief that the world was fundamentally good, that doing the right thing would always work out. "He'd be proud of you, you know," her father said quietly from behind her. "Marcus. He'd be so proud of what you did." "I don't feel proud," Sarah admitted. "I feel broken." "You're not broken, honey. You're wounded. There's a difference. Wounds heal." Sarah wanted to believe him, but as the days passed, she found it harder and harder to adjust to normal life. Her friends wanted to take her out, to celebrate her return, but Sarah couldn't handle the crowds, the noise. She jumped at sudden sounds. She woke up screaming from nightmares about interrogation rooms and gunfire. The media wanted interviews, wanted her to tell her story again and again. Sarah's face had become famous, the American nurse who'd stood up to a dictator. Book publishers were offering contracts. People like Commander Badu, making the ultimate sacrifice for redemption. People like Amara and Dr. Mensah and so many others, risking everything to do what was right. When the plane landed in the capital city, Sarah was surprised by what she saw. The military checkpoints were gone. The soldiers patrolling the streets had been replaced by regular police. The tension that had hung over everything had lifted. Ajoa was waiting for her at the airport, along with Ambassador Chun and Colonel Kruma. The young woman ran forward and embraced Sarah, both of them crying. "Thank you," Ajoa whispered. "Thank you for everything." "I'm so sorry I couldn't save him," Sarah said. "You did save him. His memory, his mission, his sacrifice. You made sure it all meant something. That's the greatest gift you could have given me." Over the next few days, Sarah toured the country she'd fled in terror. She visited the village where she'd first met Kofi, now peaceful and rebuilding. Amara greeted her like a long-lost sister, introducing Sarah to her children and showing her the new clinic that was being built with international aid money. "We named it after you," Amara said proudly, pointing to a sign, "The Sarah Mitchell Memorial Clinic." "I'm not dead," Sarah protested, laughing despite her tears. "No, but the old Sarah is. The one who came here thinking she could save the world with bandages and medicine. You became something more, something stronger. We wanted to honor that." Sarah visited Dr. Mensah, who'd reopened his clinic and was training new doctors. She visited Yaw and the other soldiers who'd participated in the rescue, who were now part of the new national security force dedicated to protecting citizens rather than oppressing them. And everywhere she went, people thanked her, not as a white savior, but as someone who'd stood beside them in their darkest hour. Someone who'd believed their lives mattered enough to risk her own. The memorial dedication ceremony took place on a bright, sunny morning. Hundreds of people gathered in what had once been a vacant lot but was now a beautiful garden with flowers, trees, and a central monument, a black granite wall inscribed with the names of those who died under Okafor's regime. At the top, in large letters, Kofi Mensah, soldier, patriot, hero. Ajoa spoke first, her voice strong and clear. "My brother died fighting for a simple truth, that power should serve the people, not exploit them. That justice matters. That one person, standing up for what's right, can change everything." She looked directly at Sarah. He found someone who believed the same thing. Someone who proved that courage isn't about where you're from or what you look like. It's about what you're willing to sacrifice for others. Then it was Sarah's turn to speak. She'd prepared remarks. 6 months after the memorial dedication, Sarah found herself standing in front of a classroom at the United Nations headquarters in Geneva. 20 healthcare workers from conflict zones around the world sat before her, their faces reflecting the same exhaustion and trauma she'd once felt. "My name is Sarah Mitchell," she began, "and I'm here to tell you that what you're experiencing, the fear, the moral dilemmas, the feeling of being caught between your duty to heal and your duty to speak truth, is valid. And you're not alone." She'd been working with the UN's Health and Human Rights Division for 4 months now, developing protocols to protect medical professionals who witnessed war crimes and human rights abuses. It was challenging work, often frustrating, bogged down in bureaucracy and politics. But it mattered. It was making a difference. After the session, a young doctor from Yemen approached her. "Miss Mitchell, I have evidence of chemical weapons being used against civilians in my region. But if I report it, I'll be targeted. My family will be targeted. How do you balance the need to expose the truth with the need to survive?" Sarah saw herself in this woman's frightened eyes. "There's no easy answer," she admitted. "I can tell you what I did. I acted on instinct, on a moral imperative I couldn't ignore. But I also got lucky. I had people who helped me, protected me, and I had evidence that was irrefutable."
She paused.
"What I can offer you now is a network, resources, legal protection, safe channels to report what you've witnessed. You don't have to do this alone." Later that evening, Sarah video called Ajoa, who was in her second year of the teacher education program. The young woman's face filled the screen, bright with excitement. "Sarah, guess what? I've been accepted into a special program. They're training teachers to work in rural areas, the villages that were most affected by the conflict. I'll be teaching children who've experienced trauma, helping them heal through education." "That's wonderful, Ajoa. Kofi would be so proud." "I know. I feel him with me sometimes, like he's watching, encouraging me to keep going." Ajoa's expression grew more serious. "How are you doing? Really?" Sarah considered the question. "Better. The nightmares are less frequent. I can handle crowds now without panicking. My therapist says I'm making good progress." She smiled softly. "And this work with the UN, it helps? Knowing that what happened to me might prevent others from facing the same choices, the same dangers, it gives meaning to everything." "Have you been back to visit the village?" "Not yet. But I'm planning to come in a few months. There's a conference on post-conflict healthcare in the capital, and I'm one of the keynote speakers. I thought I'd extend the trip, spend some time in the village, see how the new clinic is doing." Sarah didn't hesitate.
"Yes.
Absolutely yes. Because Kofi gave his life, trying to save his country. The least I could do was help him succeed." The interview continued for hours, covering everything: the escape through the jungle, the interrogation, the rescue mission, Commander Badu's sacrifice, the memorial. Sarah found herself crying several times, the emotions still raw despite the months that had passed. "What do you want people to understand about what happened?" Grace asked as they were wrapping up. Sarah thought carefully about her answer. "I want them to understand that fighting corruption, standing up to power, exposing injustice, it's not easy. It's not clean. It's messy and terrifying and painful. People die. Lives are destroyed. But it's necessary. Because the alternative, letting evil men operate in the darkness, letting them hurt innocent people without consequence, that's worse." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "I also want people to understand that heroes aren't perfect. Kofi wasn't perfect. Commander Badu certainly wasn't. I'm not. We're all just flawed human beings trying to do the right thing in impossible situations. And sometimes the right thing costs everything. But it's still right." "What's next for you?" Grace asked. "I'm going to keep doing this work, protecting healthcare workers, building systems to expose abuse, advocating for justice. And in a few months, I'm going back to the village. There's a medical conference, but also—" Sarah smiled softly. "I want to see the clinic they named after me. I want to see the children Ajoa will be teaching. I want to see the future Kofi died to create." After the interview, Sarah felt drained but also lighter somehow. Telling the story again, owning her part in it, had been cathartic. That night, she received a message from an unknown number. Her heart raced, old paranoia kicking in, but when she opened it, she saw it was from Emmanuel, Dr. Mensah's nephew who'd driven her to the UN compound that fateful day. "Miss Sarah," the message read, "I hope you remember me. My uncle said you might be coming back to visit. I wanted you to know that I started a program giving free rides to people seeking medical care who can't afford transportation. I call it the Kofi Mensah Transit Initiative. Because he showed us that ordinary people can make extraordinary differences. You both inspired me to try to do the same." Sarah read the message 3 times, tears streaming down her face. This was the ripple effect Kofi had hoped for. Not just removing one corrupt general, but inspiring a generation to believe that change was possible, that justice was worth fighting for, that ordinary people had power. She replied, "Emmanuel, that's beautiful. I'm so proud of you. Kofi would be too. And yes, I'll be visiting in a few. I have an announcement," Ajoa said when the meal was winding down. "I've decided to do my teaching practicum here, in this village. Starting next month, I'll be working at the school, teaching children who were traumatized by the violence. Helping them heal, helping them hope." "That's perfect," Sarah said, squeezing her hand. "It's exactly what Kofi would have wanted." "I know. I feel like I'm completing his mission in my own way. He fought to free the country. Now I'm fighting to free minds, to educate the next generation, so this never happens again." As the celebration continued late into the night, Sarah found herself walking back to her old clinic, the one she'd operated out of before everything happened. It was abandoned now, patients having moved to the new facility. But the building still stood, a testament to where it all began. She went inside, using her phone for light. The examination table where she'd first treated Kofi was still there, covered in dust. The cabinets where she'd kept her supplies stood empty. Everything was the same, yet completely different. "I thought I'd find you here," a voice said from the doorway. Sarah turned to see Grace Osei, camera in hand. "Are you filming me?" "Just for a moment. This is where it all started, isn't it? The most important decision of your life, made in this room." "Yes," Sarah said softly. "This is where I stopped being just a nurse and became something else. Something I'm still figuring out." "The documentary is almost finished," Grace said, lowering the camera. "I wanted to show you the ending I've written. See if you approve." She pulled out her phone and read. Sarah Mitchell returned to her normal life, but nothing about her was normal anymore. She'd seen the best and worst of humanity. She'd lost her innocence but gained wisdom. She'd sacrificed her peace but achieved justice. And she discovered that one person, in one moment, really can change the world. Grace looked up. "What do you think?" Sarah considered it. I think the ending isn't written yet. Because the story isn't over. Ajoa is just starting her teaching career. The country is still healing. I'm still working to protect other healthcare workers. This isn't an ending, it's a beginning. So, what would you say? If you could speak directly to people watching this documentary, people who might face their own moment of choice, what would you tell them? Sarah thought of Kofi's smile, of his belief in her. She thought of her brother Marcus and his dedication to serving others. She thought of every patient she'd ever saved, every life she'd touched. "I'd tell them that courage isn't the absence of fear," Sarah said slowly. "It's acting despite the fear. I'd tell them that one person really can make a difference, but it often